Welcome to Chicago. If you've never visited this city, it may seem a bit overwhelming. It's the largest city in the Midwest, but I can tell you that after living here for a long time, it starts feeling like kind of a small town in a good way. One of the great things about living in Chicago, besides the food and the beaches, is that it's not hard to live here without a car. We have an extensive transit system, and that includes CTA L trains, a grid of CTA buses, and we also have an extensive commuter rail system called Metra that can take you just about anywhere in the suburbs. And we even have a line that goes directly to Indiana called the South Shore Line, which will take you as far as South Bend, Indiana, and places like the Indiana Dunes. So if you want to live car-free, this is really one of the best places in the country to live. I mean, it's got one of the most extensive transit systems behind New York City. And, this is a much more affordable place to live in New York. Rents are about a third of what they are in New York. With a lot of the same things you would like, just more affordable and more accessible. All right, so what I'd like to do now is just give you a brief preview of the map I created for you guys. It's an interactive map. I think the article I did said something like, feel out of the loop, check out our interactive map. So one thing I should tell you before we get started is that we are, transit-wise, at sort of a moment of crisis in Chicago, Chicagoland. That's what we call the region, Chicago and its suburbs, because we are approaching something called the transit fiscal cliff. Because of COVID-19 and less ridership after COVID, and federal COVID stimulus funds are running out, and by 2016, next year, it's predicted that we will have a $771 million deficit for our three local transit systems: the CTA, Metra, and PACE, which is the suburban bus system. So at the end of May, there was a crisis at the State House down in Springfield, Illinois, where legislators were trying to pass a transit funding and reform bill in order to fill that fiscal budget gap. But it didn't happen. Some people weren't happy with what was proposed. So now we're in danger of having a 40% cut in service for our three transit systems and 3,000 transit workers being laid off. So it's really important for them to solve this problem over the summer, or the three agencies are going to have to start planning for having $770 million less revenue next year, which means we might have less bus service than like Kansas City or Madison, Wisconsin. All right, what else did I want to tell you? So the map I created is sort of a choose your own adventure thing, or I think Phil has a couple routes in mind as well. But I emphasized several forms of transportation here. You folks might want to check out our extensive train system. We have 5 or 6 big train stations that serve Metra and or South Shore and or Amtrak. Union Station is our biggest station, and that's over there across the river. That will take you to Chicago is a transportation hub, a rail hub, and you can that's another thing that makes it a great place to live without a car, is if you want to go to most of the other major cities in the United States, you can just take Amtrak there instead of flying or driving. It might take you a while, but it'll be an interesting ride. For example, you can get to New Orleans by train, go directly south down the country, and that takes about 18 hours. You sleep on the train, so I recommend that trip. All right, so some other things featured on the map are our protected bike lane system. This is actually a really good place for us to hang out because you see the nexus of a few different transit modes here, transportation modes. So this big shelter here is a Loop Link Bus Rapid Transit light station. If you folks are familiar with bus rapid transit, that's something that exists in a lot of cities around the world. It's big in Latin America and Asia, and so New York has some good express buses nowadays. But ideally, a bus rapid transit system would have prepaid boarding, which means you pay your ticket before you get on the bus, so you don't have to wait in line to pay your fare. It would have level boarding so that you don't have to climb stairs to get on the bus very much. So that's pretty much what this is. That platform there takes you up to about bus level. It should have dedicated lanes for the buses, which this does theoretically. You can see this bus is going down the red lane. The problem is the bus lanes in Chicago are not enforced very well, which means it's not uncommon for drivers to use the lanes to drive in them or park in them. So the city is trying to address that. But as things stand in Illinois right now, it's illegal to have cameras to enforce bus lanes or bike lanes, to enforce rules against driving in the bus lanes or bike lanes. So hopefully we'll pass some legislation in the state in the future to handle that. All right, so so these, I call this BRT Lite because we don't have the prepaid boarding and we don't have very good enforcement. So one thing that's cool about our loop link system, though, is they have combined these island bus stations. The bus stations are away from the sidewalk, and you notice there's like a ramp that will get you on a wheelchair up to the ramp. Definitely the wave of the future is making all transit facilities accessible to people with disabilities. By the way, if anyone has any questions when I'm talking, feel free to raise your hand or you can just call something out. So this island bus station doubles as protection for this bike lane. So this is what you call a protected bike lane. It's designed with either concrete protection, those flexible plastic posts, which aren't that useful if a driver wants to drive in the lane, they can just drive over them, or parked cars. So we've got a fair amount of those in the loop nowadays. Recently, the Chicago Department of Transportation improved a lot of the bike lanes by adding curb protection. So, Washington is a good route for getting eastbound across the loop. So as I said in the map, the loop is Chicago's central business district, basically. It's that peninsula of land. You've got the Chicago River, goes west from Lake Michigan and then goes south. And then there's also a north branch that goes northwest. And then that goes down and connects with the Sanitarium Ship Canal. And that all eventually leads to the Mississippi River. So, anybody got any questions about anything I've talked about so far?
Let's
keep moving, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Let me just real quick go over some of this stuff. So one of the first things on the list is Madison and State. We're on Washington. Madison is the westbound loop link route. That does not have a bike lane on it. The westbound route for bikes near here is Randolph Street, which is westbound. It's over there. By the way, that's the Thompson Center over there, which is being turned into a Google headquarters. That's why it's all the glass is removed right now. Let me just point out a few more things while we're here. So this is our City Hall, Cook County building. This is the Cook County side, and then City Hall is on the other side. That's where a lot of the decisions about transportation get made here. So I attend a lot of meetings by the City Council. We have 50 alder people from the 50 wards in Chicago. The population of Chicago is about 2.7 million. It's the third largest city in the United States. And we have 50 alders, each one representing, they're sort of like a mini mayor for 1 out of 50 sectors in the city. So each of them has about 50,000 constituents, and they make all the decisions about sustainable transportation. That's one of the problems we have in Chicago is like, we don't have the world's greatest bicycle network or transit network, dedicated bus network, because each one passes through several wards, and you have to have all the alders on board with the policy or else it won't get passed. Like if you want to do a long bike lane, it helps a lot if the ward is pretty long. We have what's called gerrymandering here, I'm sure you do in places where you live, that the city is divided up into lots of jigsaw puzzles. And that was done to make sure everybody gets fair representation in the city council. But the problem is you have a lot of weird decisions to make about, where a straight line goes. All right, so also here we have the 1967 Picasso sculpture. lot of people think it looks like a chimpanzee or like a woman, but that's not. This is where our critical mass bicycle parade takes place on the last Friday of every month.
So
Also lots of special events here. All right, so one thing you might want to check is over at State and Madison. That's the ground zero of our city. Addresses are north of Madison Street, south of Madison Street, and they are west of State Street and east of State Street. Not much of that city not much of our city is east of State Street, but we do have an east side neighborhood, and some of the southeast side is. All right, real quick, let's go through some stuff. One thing you might check out while you're here is what I call Chicago's dumbest intersection. It's a very dangerous intersection. Somebody was fatally struck on a divvy bike share bicycle a few weeks ago there at Randolph and Michigan Avenue. Michigan Avenue is our main shopping street. Randolph is a bike route you can take to Lake Michigan and the Lakefront Trail. And the problem with that intersection is Michigan Avenue is like 10 lanes wide there. And the intersection also, you got a north-south street and an east-west street, and there's no south crosswalk. So if you're going from the Chicago Cultural Center, where a lot of special events happen, and Millennium Park, which is our big arts and performance space nowadays, you're supposed to cross 3 streets to get from the Chicago Cultural Center to Millennium Park because there's no crosswalk. Because they want to facilitate drivers coming off Lakeshore Drive, getting onto Michigan Avenue, or at least drivers coming from Upper Randolph to go into Michigan Avenue. All right, let me just take a quick look here, see if there's anything else we should discuss. I think you guys will be able to figure most of the stuff out from the article I set up, but I'll just close by saying I hope you folks enjoy checking out sustainable transportation here. I think Chicago really is one of the world's great capitals, as being like a petri dish for figuring out sustainable transportation initiatives. I don't think we're the greatest sustainable transportation city in the world, but we're a pretty good one by U.S. standards. So if you decide to go into the urban planning or transportation planning fields, I think you could really do worse than to settle down here. So get to know the city while you're in town, and I would definitely encourage you to consider taking a job here after you get out of college.